Sarah Mitchell's life was peaceful. Mornings began with the aroma of fresh coffee, books stacked on the table, and the comfortable silence of the house she had long learned to call home. At 52, a widow and mother of an adult daughter, Sarah believed the past was merely a distant memory, something buried by time. Until one ordinary morning, fate knocked on her door. There, on the entryway rug, a yellowed envelope lay alone. The paper, worn and fragile, seemed to have traveled for decades before reaching her. No sender. No warning. Just her name written by hand. Sarah furrowed her brow. She hesitated. A strange feeling grew inside her, a subtle but unsettling premonition. Then she turned the envelope, and time seemed to freeze. There, scribbled in black ink, was a name she hadn't seen in 30 years. John Carter. Her heart raced. Her fingers trembled. The name brought a flood of memories, stolen smiles, whispered promises, a love interrupted without explanation. John Carter. The man she loved. The man who disappeared without a trace. Swallowing hard, Sarah slid her finger under the flap of the envelope and pulled out the letter. The paper was fragile, the words slightly faded but still legible. Then she began to read. If you're reading this, it means my plan failed. But you need to know the truth before it's too late. The world around her seemed to spin. Plan? Failed? What truth? The past she thought she knew never existed the way she believed. And now, everything was about to change. The paper trembled between Sarah's fingers. The weight of John Carter's words seemed to suffocate her. If you're reading this, it means my plan failed. Plan? What plan? And why now, after 30 years, had this letter finally reached her? She closed her eyes and like a whirlwind, the past came rushing back. 1994. Sarah was 22 with her whole life ahead of her. The days were filled with dreams, laughter, and the promise of a bright future. It was that summer, amidst the busy streets of Boston, that she met John Carter. He was unlike anyone she had ever known. A photographer, free-spirited, intense. A rebel soul who saw beauty where no one else did. He taught her to see the world through different eyes, to live without fear, to believe that love could be eternal. And for a time it was. The memory was vivid. The sound of the sea in the background, the glow of the city lights reflecting in his eyes. Stay with me, Sarah. Let's leave here. Just the two of us. She laughed, calling him crazy. But deep down she wanted to say yes. At that time there were no doubts. John was the love of her life. But then, he disappeared. No explanations. No goodbyes. One day he was there, promising a future together. The next, only emptiness. Sarah waited. Days, weeks, months. But John never came back. And when she finally accepted that he was gone, the pain consumed her. She moved on. Buried the feelings, married Michael, had her daughter, Emily. She learned to live without looking back. Or so she thought she had. Now, 30 years later, this letter made her question everything. John hadn't abandoned her. Something had happened. Something he had tried to tell her, and someone had done everything to stop it. And Sarah wouldn't rest until she uncovered the truth. The letter trembled in her hands. The name John Carter still seemed to echo in her mind, like a ghost that had never really left. If you're reading this, it means my plan failed. But you need to know the truth before it's too late. Sarah took a deep breath and continued. I tried to come back to you, but someone wouldn't let me. Someone close to you, someone you trust. Her eyes scanned the letter, devouring every word. They did everything to silence me. They forced me away. They threatened me. And by the time I realized what was happening, it was too late. Sarah's throat tightened. Who would do this? Who would have a reason to keep them apart? She kept reading. I never abandoned you, Sarah. They made you believe that. Her chest tightened. For 30 years, she had carried the pain of being left behind. Now, in an instant, everything she believed seemed to crumble. The worst was yet to come. But what hurts the most is what they hid from you. Something that would change your life forever. I can no longer protect you. But you need to find out. Sarah's hands gripped the paper tightly. What did this mean? What had they hidden from her? At the end of the letter, only one clue. Look in what I left behind. The truth is there. But be careful, they're still around. The air around her seemed heavy. Who were they? Who would have a reason to prevent John from coming back? Sarah closed her eyes and tried to organize her thoughts. Why had this letter arrived only now? Who had hidden it for so long? And the most terrifying question of all. If someone stopped John from coming back, how far would that person be willing to go to keep this secret buried? She didn't know the answer. But one thing was certain. Now she wouldn't stop until she uncovered the whole truth. Sarah stared at the letter on the table. The name John Carter seemed to pulse like an open wound. The words still echoed in her mind. Someone close to you. Someone you trust. All along, she had believed that John had abandoned her. But now, everything pointed to someone having forced him away. And that person could still be nearby. Sarah felt a tightness in her chest. 30 years had passed. Her husband, Michael, had died. Her daughter, Emily, was now an adult. But there was someone somewhere who knew the truth. She couldn't let this story die here. That afternoon, Sarah decided to take action. She climbed up to the attic. There, among dusty boxes and old mementos, she found a wooden chest. Inside there were old letters, photographs, and a small black leather journal. Her heart raced. The journal was from 1994, the year everything happened. Sarah quickly flipped through the pages, her fingers trembling. Amidst the faded text, she found a strange note, almost illegible. John disappeared. Something's wrong. Michael told me to forget about it, but why do I feel like he knows more than he's saying? Sarah felt the blood run cold in her veins. Had her husband tried to make her forget? Did he know something? Sarah's phone vibrated, pulling her from her thoughts. It was Emily. Mom? Are you okay? You sound different. Her daughter's concerned voice made Sarah hesitate. John had mentioned that someone close to her was hiding the truth. What if that person was still lying? She looked at the journal in her hands and knew there was no turning back. If Michael was involved, if Emily knew something without realizing it, or if someone else was still around, Sarah was about to find out. But the truth came with a price. And maybe someone would go to any lengths to ensure she never learned what really happened that night 30 years ago. The black leather journal trembled in Sarah's hands. Michael knew. For 30 years, her husband had convinced her that John had abandoned her. But what if it wasn't true? The note in the journal was clear. Michael told her to forget. But why? What did he know? Sarah closed her eyes and tried to remember. 1994. The year that destroyed everything. Back then, when John disappeared, Michael was always around. He comforted her. He said she needed to move on. He was the one who insisted that she stop searching, that she accept that John was gone. Now, it seemed more than just advice. It seemed like a plan. That night, Sarah sat with her daughter, Emily. The unease wouldn't leave her. Do you remember anything about your dad talking about John Carter? Emily frowned. John Carter? The name sounds familiar. Sarah felt her heart race. What do you know, Emily? Her daughter hesitated. I was just a kid, Mom. But I remember hearing Dad argue with a man on the phone. You cried a lot back then. I never knew why. Sarah swallowed hard. Michael argued with someone? Could it have been John? What else do you remember? Emily scratched her head, trying to recall. I heard Dad say something like, if you show up, I'll finish you. The air left Sarah's lungs. Her husband threatened John? The phone rang, pulling Sarah out of her thoughts. Unknown number. She answered. You should have left this in the past, Sarah. A deep, cold voice. Sarah went silent, her heart racing uncontrollably. The truth won't bring you peace. Only more pain. The call ended. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Someone was watching her. And now she knew, the 30-year-old lie was about to crumble. But who was still trying to hide the truth? And most importantly, how far would that person go to stop her? The voice on the phone still echoed in Sarah's mind. You should have left this in the past. Her blood ran cold. This wasn't a warning. It was a threat. Someone still wanted to keep the truth buried. But now Sarah had no choice. She needed to find out what really happened to John Carter that night 30 years ago. The next morning, Sarah drove to the old house where she had lived with Michael. The property had been sold after his death, but it still held secrets that only she knew. With trembling hands, she crossed the garden to the abandoned garage. At the back, under a shelf of rusted tools, was a wooden trapdoor. Sarah knelt down and, with effort, pulled up the lid. Inside, covered in dust and time, was a metal box locked with a padlock. Her heart raced. She didn't know how, but she felt that the box contained the answers she was looking for. Sarah forced the padlock. Nothing. But then, she remembered the journal. The number scribbled on the last page. 1994. Her hands were sweating as she turned the numbers on the lock. 9, 4. Click. The padlock opened. Sarah took a deep breath and lifted the lid of the box. Inside there were old photos, John and her, together. And in the middle of them, a stack of yellowed letters. Never delivered. With heavy breath, Sarah picked up the first one and began to read. Sarah, I tried to talk to you. I tried to find you. But your husband threatened me. He said that if I didn't disappear, something terrible would happen to you. I couldn't risk it, but I never stopped loving you." Her body went numb. Michael lied. He knew that John had been trying to come back to her. He stopped him. Sarah's hands gripped the paper. Then, who sent that letter 30 years later? And even more terrifying, why? A noise from outside. Sarah froze. Someone was there. She wasn't alone. And for the first time, she realized that discovering the truth could cost her life. Sarah stood motionless. Someone was there. The sound of footsteps was getting closer to the shed. Her mind screamed to run, but her legs felt glued to the ground. She gripped the letters tightly and slowly hid behind an old shelf. The door creaked as it was pushed open. The silhouette of a tall man appeared against the daylight. She didn't recognize him immediately. But then, her heart stopped. John Carter. His eyes met hers. For a moment, time froze. He was alive. "You finally figured it out, Sarah?" His voice was hoarse, tired. She could hardly breathe. The man she loved, the man she believed had disappeared, was standing right in front of her. Sarah staggered forward, the letters trembling in her hands. You never abandoned me?" John smiled sadly. "Never." She felt warm tears streak down her face. "Then why? Why didn't we ever see each other again? Why did that letter only reach me now?" John lowered his head. "There was more. Something worse. I tried to come back to you, but someone made sure that never happened." Sarah already knew the answer before he even spoke. "Michael." John nodded slowly. "He didn't just threaten me, Sarah. He destroyed me. He kept me away from everything. And he didn't do it alone." The ground seemed to disappear beneath her feet. "What do you mean by that?" John hesitated, his eyes heavy with a weight she still didn't understand. "Michael had help." Sarah felt a cold shiver run down her spine. "From who?" John took a deep breath. Then he said the name that made Sarah's world shatter. "Emily." The air left her lungs. "No, that's impossible. My daughter, she was just a child." John closed his eyes as if carrying a burden too heavy to bear. "She was just a child when it all started, Sarah. But she grew up hearing your husband's lies. And now, she'd do anything to keep this story buried." The truth hit like a punch. The threat on the phone. Emily's sudden concern. Sarah never imagined her own daughter could be involved. Now everything made sense. Someone didn't want her to discover the truth. And that someone had always been by her side. John's words still echoed in Sarah's mind. Emily. Sarah couldn't believe it. Her daughter, her own daughter, involved in all of this? She looked at John, his eyes filled with pain and regret. "Are you sure, John?" Her voice trembled. Emily was so young. How could she be involved in something so dark? John lowered his head. "I saw the signs, Sarah. I tried to warn you, but it was too late. Michael didn't want anyone to know what was happening, and Emily, being his daughter, was manipulated from a young age. She grew up believing you were in danger." Sarah felt the world collapse around her. She never imagined that her daughter, the person she trusted most, was part of such a deep conspiracy. Did she know? Did she know you were trying to come back? John looked directly into Sarah's eyes. She knew everything. Silence filled the room. The betrayal was closer than she could have ever imagined. But there was more. "What else didn't you tell me, John?" Sarah asked, her voice now firm. "Why didn't you come to me before? Why did this letter only show up now?" John took a deep breath. "Because I needed to make sure Emily didn't know I was alive. She has much more power than you realize. And she's already done whatever was necessary to keep the secret." The air was heavy. But like a snap, a terrible idea surged into Sarah's mind. If Emily knew everything, maybe she was even more involved than John realized. Her daughter had been with them all along. Maybe she was pulling the strings from behind the curtains. She looked toward the door, where a soft sound indicated someone was approaching. With a shiver, Sarah realized. Emily was there. "You knew, didn't you?" Sarah spoke plainly, turning toward the door. Emily entered the room with a calm, controlled expression. But Sarah could feel that something was wrong. Very wrong. "Mom, what are you doing here with him?" Emily said, her tone almost cold. "I told you not to get involved with this." Emily's words were like a slap to the face. She was standing there, looking at Sarah with a coldness that made her seem like a stranger. "You knew everything, didn't you, Emily?" Sarah asked, anger beginning to take hold. Emily didn't hesitate. "Of course I did, Mom. I knew everything," she responded with unsettling calm. "But you don't understand. I was trying to protect you. And your life." The tension in the room grew. Sarah felt her mind spinning, trying to process everything she had just heard. Emily wasn't trying to protect anyone. She was lying. And the most terrifying thing was realizing that, until now, the true enemy had been inside her own house, manipulating everything, breaking every piece of her trust, of her life. Sarah looked at John. He also felt the weight of the revelation. They were surrounded, isolated by their own flesh and blood. Sarah's daughter was involved in something much bigger and more dangerous than she had ever imagined. And now, the greatest test of her life was about to begin. Who, among them, would be the true enemy? The tension in the room was almost palpable. Sarah stared at Emily, her eyes narrowing with a mix of pain and anger. Her daughter, whom she had loved so much, was now standing before her like a stranger. "You don't understand, Mom. I did all of this for you. I protected you," Emily said, her voice calm but with a dangerous intensity behind the words. Sarah took a step forward. "Protected? You destroyed everything, Emily. Everything I believed." Emily smiled, but it was an empty smile, as if she had finally won a battle Sarah hadn't even known she was fighting. "You never knew what was going on behind the scenes, Mom. Do you think Michael and I did this to hurt you? No. We did this to protect you from the truth. The truth you weren't ready to face." John watched them, his face filled with anguish. He had tried, but now it seemed too late. Sarah felt a lump form in her throat. The truth she had feared so much. The truth? What is the truth, Emily? That you knew all along that John was alive? That my own husband betrayed me, manipulated me, and kept me from finding the person I loved most. Emily took a step back, as if trying to regain control over what was happening. But there was no more control. "Yes, Mom. I knew. I saw everything. And I knew what you would feel if you knew. The pain, the heartbreak. It wasn't what I wanted for you. It wasn't what I wanted to happen to our family." Sarah sat down, the weight of those words crushing her heart. Our family. The idea that everything she believed to be true had been built on lies was more than she could bear. She looked at John, who was now slowly approaching. His expression was one of regret and sadness. "I loved you, Sarah. I always have. But when I saw what was happening, I knew I couldn't come near you. I tried for years. I had hope, but Emily was in control." Sarah closed her eyes. She felt as though she were living a nightmare. But it was real. The pain was there and she couldn't ignore it anymore. Emily stepped forward, her cold eyes now more vulnerable, as if something inside her was crumbling. "I did what I did because you were happy with Michael. He loved you in a way I never understood. But what you don't know is that he was always afraid of losing you, and that was the only way he could have you all to himself." John looked at Sarah, his eyes filled with regret. "He isolated you, Sarah. He used you. But I never stopped loving you. I never stopped waiting for you." Silence filled the room as Sarah tried to process everything that was happening. She looked at Emily and for the first time, saw not only the daughter she loved but also a woman filled with confusion, fear, and guilt. The truth, as painful as it was finally in front of her. The pain, the betrayal, the lies. All of it was leaving in that moment. Sarah stood up. The decision had been made. She needed to choose what to do with the truth. "I don't know what to do with all of this. But I know one thing. It's time for all of us to face the consequences of our choices." She looked at John. "I don't know if we can go back to what we were, John. But the truth has always been here, and now that we've found it, maybe, just maybe, we can move forward." Emily remained silent, her eyes starting to tear up. She seemed to finally understand the pain she had caused her mother. But time couldn't go back. The loss was irreparable. Sarah looked toward the future, to the new chapter of her life. The past, with all its lies and betrayals, was buried. And finally she was ready to start over. The reunion wasn't just with John. It was with herself. And that, more than anything else, would bring true healing. And so, the cycle of lies and betrayals came to an end, but the true reunion was with the truth itself. Something that, as painful as it was, brought liberation. Sarah's journey teaches us that no matter how much the past has marked us, it is always possible to find the courage to start over, to face our own ghosts, and in doing so, heal the deepest wounds. If this story touched you, remember, the truth is the key that sets us free, even when it seems difficult to accept. It's important to move forward, even when everything around us seems uncertain. Now, I want to hear from you. What is the most important lesson you learned from this story? Leave your comment below and share what you felt throughout this journey. Your voice is very important here. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell so you don't miss the upcoming videos. We have many more stories, reflections, and emotional moments ahead. I am deeply grateful to have you here with us. See you soon.